to make everyone aware that SAP integration is responsible for the selling processes, for shipping processes, for buying processes.
Because of the lack of the SAP API testing, they actually land in the situation where they have lots of issues in the UATs, in the end-to-end testing.
My name is Michał Krawczyk, and welcome to another episode of Navigating SAP API Testing, the show where we talk about why and how SAP organizations can test SAP integrations, which are the backbone of digital transformations. The idea behind today's episode is pretty simple. At INT4, we frequently see that integrations are absolutely necessary in running the most important business functions for SAP customers, such as, for example, selling, buying, shipping. But despite of that, they are very often the most overlooked. Their priority, if we can use this kind of metaphor, is just making sure that they are working as intended, but it's almost as low as making the documentation, which is not something we want. So if you ever thought that your organization should pay more attention to interfaces, to APIs, maybe utilize and build them in a better way, if you think that your organization should probably test their correct list in a slightly different way, then this episode is definitely for you. Our today's guest is Mateusz Nowak, and together with Mateusz, we're going to talk about the most basic concepts regarding SAP APIs. So, welcome, Mateusz. Before we jump into the general topic, maybe if you could tell us a little bit more about your background when it comes to SAP API testing.
If you think about APIs, right, then I think that it could be even not related to my professional career, let's say, right? Because the first time probably I was some kind of engaged or I had a touch with the APIs was probably when I was doing my first online shopping. And at that time, I probably was even not aware that I'm using the APIs, yeah? But of course, then professionally, right, I started with some I started my let's say career as the integration developer, where I did some SAP PO mappings, then developing ABAP programs, backend interfaces, SAP AAF, SAP Cloud Integration interface, iFlows, right? And then I landed in the current position at 94 where we are actually helping the most one of the biggest companies in the world to actually automate the SAP APIs. And my point actually is that within all those different positions, right, I also was not aware that all of those different roles are actually connected to the backbone of all the business processes, right? Because I think that we will discuss this today, that everyone is looking into, you know, the specific the specific role or the specific task that have to be done. But if we talk about the APIs, that's actually something that is the core, yeah.
But so Matt, you've mentioned APIs being the core, but maybe for the sake of this of this episode, let's at least try to with an assumption that maybe we don't know that much. Maybe I don't know that much about interfaces and APIs. Can you tell our audience a little bit more? Why should we even care about interfaces, about APIs? Why are they the core? Why do you think about that?
Assuming that you don't know anything about the APIs, right? Maybe let's start from the definition of the API, right? So the definition is that these are application programming interfaces, but that's probably the reason why in the SAP world we all call them just interfaces, right? And to put it even more simpler, right? APIs allows you to connect two independent applications, two independent systems, to just communicate between each other, yeah. And maybe just to you ask why we should care about it, right? So let me actually ask you the question to highlight it, right? um, let's say that you want to send the package to your colleague from Germany, let's say, yeah, as a
Mhm.
gift. Maybe one of your SAP press books, but only one, because then the package will be too heavy. Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
how would you do this? Yeah. How would you send it?
Yeah, I just go to a page. I just fill out the data and I press please please courier come to pick the package, and that's it. I mean, I just use a web page. So this I would just be using a user interface, right, for this perspective.
Yeah. So actually, all the steps that you described, right? These are tightly connected with the APIs, right? So, you know, you said that you're going to the website, you are maybe using some kind of a mobile application, so you're not calling anyone on the GLS or FedEx couriers to do this, right? um, every action that you actually do, right, is then sent via APIs, right? Because all of the things that you would do for such simple things as simple thing as sending the package is using APIs. And if you think about large businesses, right, that connects with lots of external applications, many different partners, customers, right? As you mentioned at the beginning of the show, right, they actually sell, buy, and ship via APIs, and that's why they are such critical to the business. And let's try one more thing, right? Because we know we are saying that the APIs are really backbone and they are crucial, right? So
Mhm.
let me ask you maybe additional question. Yeah, what would happen if you stopped drinking water for the next, let's say, 6 7 days?
Yeah, I'm gone, I guess.
Yeah, or you would damage your body, right? And I know that it may be quite a bold statement, but in my opinion, APIs are as important to businesses as water is to people, right? Because if your APIs are not working for several days, your business is gone. Yeah, and if it's not gone, it will suffer huge losses, right? So I think that that's why we should care, right? Because APIs are really the backbone of everything that you do within your business.
Okay, so maybe going a step further, is it fair to say that maybe taking also your example with water, if is it fair to say that right now there is no replacement for many businesses for using interfaces and APIs? Is there, let's say the interfaces are not working for, as you mentioned, for a few days, can we still go back to the manual mode and retype everything, use I don't know, telephones to communicate? Is it possible, or does it mean that we can only work, I don't know, 5%, only 5% of the business for the biggest companies is working because everything is based on the interfaces?
Well, of course, I cannot say that it would be 100% correct, right? But in my opinion, it would be really impossible, right? Because, imagine that you are selling your goods to your customers, right? Um, with mobile applications, with some websites, right? At the same hour, you can sell like thousands of different kind of products, right? And now imagine that, let's say, you are not able to ship any of those products to your customers. What would happen? I mean, you are not able, considering the way how now people are used to buy things, to they are actually used to use those APIs without knowing that they are using APIs. So if you would like to handle it without the interfaces, right, I think that it would cause huge delays. And when we mentioned selling, shipping, right, so most of all those messages are going through the EDI interfaces, right? So let's say that,
And what's an EDI? Can you tell us a little bit more? Tell the audience a little bit more about the
yeah.
EDI?
So this is, I would say, quite all standard of the messages that most of the companies are using, right? So these are electronic document interchanges, right? And they are the reason why people, in my opinion, still, or businesses still are using them, despite the fact that they are quite old, because they are asynchronous, right? That they are really standardized. So you can really scale your business while using them. You can really handle like hundreds or thousands of messages daily. And if let's say, coming back to this example, right? If your EDI interfaces will not working, so basically you are not exchanging the messages with your warehousing management systems, right? With all the other applications, then first of all you will have to pay probably lots of penalties. But then if your customer is expects to receive the goods within, I don't know, maximally 1-3 days, and your APIs are not working, right? Then what will happen? The customer will definitely buy it from some other company, right? So you're losing the customer, and you're losing a lot of money on all those EDI penalties, I would say.
And Mateusz, you've mentioned a technical term like this EDI. Are all APIs the same, or is there any difference between, let's say, SAP APIs or APIs for that matter? Are there any
Mhm.
differences? Could you maybe highlight those if there are
Mm.
any?
The SAP APIs and the APIs are, yeah, they are probably very similar, but they are also have some specific differences, right? So um, the SAP APIs, I would say, in most cases, as I mentioned, right, they have to handle hundreds or even thousands of messages daily. So amongst others, due to the volume of the messages and the processing logic, majority of them are actually asynchronous interfaces, right? In contrast, traditional APIs, uh, as per my knowledge, they are mostly synchronous. What is also super important is that most SAP APIs are managed by some, enterprise middleware platforms that are, let's say, sitting between your external systems, your partners, and your SAP system, right? So maybe just to name a few, right? It could be SAP Process Orchestration, SAP Cloud Integration, or non-SAP like Boomi or Web Methods, right? And the reason why I'm actually mentioning those middleware platforms, right, is because thanks to this, um, the development, the monitoring, the error handling is much more standardized, right? And maybe what is important for us from the standpoint of testing the SAP APIs is that those messages are persisted, yeah, and they are also persisted in the standardized way. So imagine having, you have your SAP S/4HANA system, your ECC, right? So imagine that you actually have the library of all the conversations that your SAP system is actually doing, and that has had in the past, right? And with this persistence, right, you can just grab those messages and resend them whenever you need. Yeah. So I think that's, in my opinion,
And
is important.
Mateusz, in terms of so you mentioned the differences in terms of the, let's say, functional processing of those. So you've mentioned that the SAP is more asynchronous, the non-SAP is more synchronous. Does it also relate to the usage pattern? So, for example, does it matter that most of the SAP interfaces are related to A, meaning more application to application integration, and maybe not that much for other types of patterns like consumer to application? Is it also the
Yes, yes.
same? Or
I think that you exactly mentioned that, right? That mostly these are the A to A interfaces, right? So the way how they are working, right? That they are totally different, because um, you know when you are you are ordering something, right? You are ordering something via let's say mobile application, right? You just got the information on your let's say screen that okay, you have posted the order, but all the information, right? How this sales order will be processed in your SAP system, right? They are they are let's say processed in the asynchronous way. So not you actually don't need to be engaged. You don't have to wait on the website as long as the sales order is processed, or you don't need to know all the details, because you are receiving as the end customer, right? Also the information from the from let's say company where you bought something, that let's say the delivery is planned for the next 2 days in some hours, right? So again, it's done in the asynchronous way, because you can see only the end results, but between this let's say sales order between the time you actually clicked to buy something, yeah, you paid for that also, right? There are multiple interactions within your let's say one application within your business, and lots of other applications, and also with the applications outside of your SAP landscape, right? So as the end user, we don't see necessarily all the steps, right? But those applications, they just handle everything.
Okay, and Mateusz, so you've mentioned a point that the let's say the non-SAP APIs are very often synchronous. So, for example, you've mentioned the case of ordering a courier, right, to pick up your parcel, and then the SAP. You said that these are mostly A to A, meaning application to application. So possibly, if I get this right, there's nothing visible to the user who is working on the transaction, because something happens maybe after he did the transaction. If we would start with this, is this the reason that the SAP integration is so overlooked? That's as we mentioned at the beginning. I mean, this is some sort of a of maybe I don't know if it's a wrong metaphor or not, but very often we get this information that, hey, but my integration work here is regarded on the last place, or almost
Mhm.
as writing a documentation. Is it because there is no immediate feedback, or is there something else specific for SAP integrations that makes it so overlooked, that no one really cares about it so much?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure whether I will give you the proper answer, but I can maybe tell you a little bit from my perspective, right? So, in my opinion, actually, that could be the issue, one of the cases, because yeah, interfaces are the backbone, right? But
Hmm.
as long as they work, nobody really cares about them, because it should work. When you're, let's say, buying a car,
Hmm.
again, of course, uh, um, all the other people have their own preferences, right? But if you buy the car, your expectation is that the engine will be working. If um, the engine will not work, right, then what you can do, you can just sit in the car, right? You are not able to do what actually you want to do with the car, right? So if we can maybe compare it to the let's say the engine and the APIs, right? Maybe the awareness of all the people within the organization is not on let's say good level to actually so they are not aware that the APIs are such crucial, and if the API will not work, then all the other user interface things that they are working on, they are focusing on, right? They will not work.
Okay, so I think maybe we got this first statement that one of the reasons why the APIs are so neglected, if I get this right from you, is that no one actually sees them working, right? So everyone expects them to work, but actually no one sees the immediate result of their work, which is, if I get this right, maybe with non-SAP APIs, which is not the case, because if you cannot order a courier through a web page, you immediately see this, right? And ordering a courier through a web page is maybe one of the biggest channels how you
Hmm.
order the couriers, right? So this has to work. With SAP, it's, if I get this right, is more like application to application communication. So you can actually do something and you believe that the interface is working, but actually it's not there.
Hmm.
The interface message maybe did not reach, maybe it got stopped at some point. So if
Yeah,
yeah.
yes, that could be, but that could be actually the case. But maybe let's to add a little bit more positive side to this, right? I think that over the course of the years, I can really see that the APIs are actually becoming more and more popular, and that they are getting more attention, the SAP APIs, right? I'm not sure what's actually the reason for that. Maybe due to the fact that SAP, Gartner, they are marketing now again the composable ERP and the clean core, where actually for all those people who did not care about the SAP APIs, now it's getting more. They are actually getting this awareness that um, yes, maybe we will not do something within our system, but we will use a specific external application. We will integrate with the external partner, right? We will be using this digital transformation. So now they are actually getting this awareness that, hey, they are some APIs behind it, right? We will communicate with those external systems, with the external applications. So maybe that's actually the case why it's getting more popular, right? So I'm really glad about this, right?
Mhm. So we've got a question from Alina, and maybe we can try to highlight this also. So Alina was asking, do you have experiences we could share about how to make business case to show the API testing should be a priority?
Hmm.
If we reverse this question a bit, Mati, and maybe try to help Alina, are there any other challenges with the current approach where the interfaces are not visible? The interfaces do not provide, as you mentioned, an immediate response. Are there any other challenges that relate to that? So is it causing any harm at all? That we're not doing that most companies do not prioritize the SAP integrations, and probably they do not test them.
I believe that the biggest um, challenge that now companies have in the really big SAP implementation projects, right? Now, a very, very hot topic, the migration to S4, right? Is that because of the lack of the SAP API testing, um, they actually land in the situation where they have lots of issues in the UATs, in the end-to-end testing, that could be really maybe not simply, but that they could be avoided if they would test much more those APIs, right? And here I think that the quite common saying is that, okay, we can have the APIs working, but what with our end-to-end business processes, right? Why should we spend much more time or much more why we should put much more attention to the SAP APIs if at the end we just want to make sure that the end-to-end business process will work, right? But what we if we actually will revert it, right? And this is something that we did with one of our customers who had a big SAP S4HANA Bluefield implementation, right? Is that if you actually focus much more on the SAP API testing, you are not testing the end-to-end process, but you are thanks to the fact that we can, grab those messages, right, from the from the middleware platforms, or from even from the old ECC system, right? We can take the real reliable messages and we can replay them on the tested systems, which means that we can actually test on the real live data. So that's one thing, right? And when we thanks to the fact that we can actually do this very quickly, we don't need to for the component based testing, as we call it, right, to actually verify some specific APIs, we don't need to generate any scripts at all, right? So coming back to this example, right? This company, they basically shifted left the API testing and they really focused on the most important APIs, the SAP APIs that they were using, right? And thanks to that, of course, they had a lot of issues in the very early stages of the project. Yeah, when they started testing with those APIs. But as probably all of us are aware, when the defect is found, when you find the issue, right, and the defect is solved in the very early stages of the project, where probably it can even be found by the person who can fix this defect, it's much more cheaper, right? um, so this company actually did this, and when they moved into the next phases of the project, right, there were really very few defects related to the to the actual to the SAP APIs, right? So it was much quicker for them to conduct the whole testing phase, and it was cheaper because, you know, when you find the issue, and that's very common scenario, when you find the issue in the during the UATs, right, and let's say it's related to the SAP APIs, right, something is not working, then it's not only the case that, you know, the SAP API developer or someone on the CPI side or maybe AF side is has to fix something, and that's done very quickly, and that's the only, let's say, a dependency. But all the people who are engaged in this end-to-end business process testing in the UAT, they are dependent on this one person, right? And of course, it's not that person who's fixing something, right, has also quite often other projects, other responsibilities, right? So that's I would say that lack of the API testing, um, or let's say pretending that we are testing it properly, causes huge delays in the SAP implementation projects.
Okay, so maybe just to summarize to Alina what you said, Mati. So you said that actually not prioritizing or not doing SAP API testing is causing, let's say, more defects. The quality of the program is might be lower. It may be more difficult to move to the maybe to the new system, which can be, for example, S4HANA or some other new environment. But but my question would be maybe one step further. So what? So what if we, let's say, all of the SAP or most of the SAP programs, we have some defects, right? We have some defects. The programs are delayed at some point in time. We always have this. So why should you test this just to maybe just to do 5% less time, just to spend 5% less time, or is there any other issue that we may not be able to fulfill?
Well, I would argue whether it's really 5%, right, of the difference. So, in my opinion, the difference is much higher, and mm, what I think is that maybe the key stakeholders should realize, right, that okay, we can spend much more time on the testing, right? We can solve those, let's say, 30 40% more time on the testing, but actually when you are doing this testing, right, all of your teams who could do different activities, who could focus on the on building something new, right, they are actually performing this either manual testing or this all way testing with the end-to-end processes, right? So it's like, you know, uh, nowadays, I think that companies need to adapt much quicker to the business environment, right? So they really need to leverage such options like the automation of the API testing, right? And maybe also showing that it's actually something that is not only dedicated to, let's say, the technical people, right? So that's, I think, very important, because let's take the functional user, right, who wants to test even something manually, right? um, and of course, in such in most situations, right, when you are performing your testing as the functional user, you somehow have to take the reliable data from that you want to test, right? Because if we think of the sales order end-to-end business process, right, nobody, or let's say maybe really small fraction of the sales orders that you have in your system are created manually, right? So all of them are actually, or let's say 95% of them are coming from the external partners, from all the web applications, mobile applications, right? And the point I'm doing here, if you are testing on some dummy data, you are spending much more time on actually preparation of that data. um, you are not able mm, to prepare enough examples, right? So the very often scenario that we can also see is that the developers, the integration experts, they actually prepare some kind of testing, but in their own technical tools. And frankly speaking, they do not prepare enough test cases, but it's not their fault, right? Because they have to prepare the data, they have to pass it to the team. And how many test cases can you create for, let's say, all of the SAP APIs that you have, right? You can do this on a very small number of messages. And then even if you test manually, you go to the next phases of the project and you find more issues later because of the fact that you have tested on either dummy data or not enough data. And with the APIs, what you can do, again, I know that I'm probably repeating myself with getting the reliable messages from the historical messages that we already exchanged, yeah. But if you take those data, you can simply reuse them, even for the manual functional testing, right? So from the very beginning, you can test on the reliable data that are really matching what you have in your productive system, right? So then after the go live, you are not shocked that you have tested maybe 3 or 5% of the variations, yeah, and interfaces.
Mhm. And Matti, you've mentioned that, just maybe to come back to the question from Alina, you've mentioned that if the testing is not done in the time and with the money that should be spent on the testing, probably the program will either be delayed and or maybe postponed, and the people who could be doing other things will still be tied to this program. What I'm thinking about, how is this related to the fact that, in order to answer the question from Alina, I mean, how to make a business case to understand that API testing is should be a priority? Is it worth to say that without this you cannot innovate? Just simply say this, right? I mean, if we would dare to say, okay, you don't need to do API testing. You can do the program for another year, or maybe you can actually postpone the program for another 2 years. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean that all of the new features of SAP that are coming in the cloud, that are coming on-prem, that you will not be able to use them? And does it make sense or not? right? What is your view on this? Just maybe let's step away from this, from the technical validation, where we can say, yeah, I mean, all sort of testing speed up the testing. All sort of test automation speeds up the testing. We can use more test cases. We can have less defects. But what does that actually mean for the business? What does it mean for the business?
Mhm. I would say that then you will try to catch a train that already left the station, right? So why we are actually doing all those transformation programs is just to be able to build some new functionalities to improve our processes, right? Just to have the edge over our competition, right? And if you are delaying such programs, then you should calculate how much you will lose, not only regards to this specific program, but regards to all the other initiatives that will have to be parked.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe Alina, if this would be the one of the answers that you could use. I don't know if you have any more comments on this. Also, please feel free to put them in the comment section. But maybe this is something we should be using. We should be showing the delay on the innovation, right? And this is what can actually, because the innovation comes from using APIs, right? Like we say constantly right now, especially with the generative AI. AI cannot do anything without API, right? AIs, all of the features of generative AI that the AI is supposed to do in real systems has to be done through APIs, right? So if you're missing on the API testing, if you cannot do any sort of testing, that means you will probably be afraid to implement the new functionality that is based on the API, right? I don't know if we can say it like this. But Mateusz, maybe let's come back to the original question also. So you've mentioned that the SAP API testing is unique, but how different is it from other types of testing? Because you've mentioned that one of the things we should have a look is the synchronous way of the architecture. Another one you've mentioned that I got was persistence. Is there anything else? Is there anything that makes the SAP API testing more enterprise wise? That, for example, the let's say the standard ideas of testing APIs, where a single developer is just testing one API with his own on his own laptop, on his own computer, is enough. Is it the same case with SAP APIs, or are there any more differences that you think our viewers should be aware?
Mhm. So I think here the what is important to maybe highlight. I wouldn't compare now the SAP APIs and non-SAP APIs, but maybe what we should focus is actually the way how the testing is done within the current SAP programs, right? So everyone is focusing on the this end-to-end testing or on the UI testing, where SAP APIs are, I would say, underestimated, right? And we know that they are core to the business, right? Um, but then something that you mentioned actually, right, is that if it comes to the SAP API testing, right, the developer, the integration experts can actually prepare some unit testing based on the knowledge that he has, or based on the limited number of the messages. But then again, this is something that is again um, available only for this one person or maybe one team to replicate it, right? The beauty actually of the SAP APIs and the fact that we have this persistence, right? Again, we can take the production messages, right? The reliable messages. We can save them as a test cases. So if you compare it to the UI testing, right, you have to prepare the script every single time when you want to test something. Here, you just need to make sure that the persistence of those messages that your system actually exchanged in the past is available, and then you can save those in the testing solution. And this is actually something that creates lots of possibilities, right? Really, lots of possibilities, because we don't have to focus only on the technical testing, because we are talking about the SAP APIs, right? Once you have the messages that actually creates the sales orders, right? Then um, as a even business experts, you can grab those messages, replay them in the test system, and work on the sales order as you would work actually on the production sales order in the test system, with the reliable data and the variations that you need. And here, maybe just to compare how much time we need for the SAP API testing, purely for the creation of the test cases, right? We can really set up some robotic rollers, right? So um, let's say at one of our customers, right, what we did, we just scanned production systems for 3 months, and for the most important interfaces, right, we collected all of those messages, right? So all of the messages from different interfaces, all of the messages from all the partners with different variations, right? And all of this was happening automatically, right? Of course, at the beginning, someone had to set up what we are interested in, and then even the structure of the test cases was grouped, let's say. So
And
if as a
Mateusz, maybe one clarification. When you're talking about messages, what kind of messages are you talking about?
Mhm.
If you could maybe explain a little bit more to our audience.
Yes, these are the messages that are exchanged via APIs, right? So let's say all of the communication that you are doing with your warehousing systems, with the web shops, right? All the EDA
So we're
partners,
talking about historical messages, you mean?
historical messages, exactly. Mhm.
Historical messages. Okay. So due to this persistence, we can also fetch the historical messages. Okay.
Yes.
And where do we fetch them from? Where the, if
So we can fetch them either from some middleware platforms, like I said, SAP PO, SAP Cloud Integration, for instance. But quite often we can also take them from the production. Let's say if we are talking about the migration to S4, for instance, right? We can just take them from the existing ECC, right? Because this is the system that actually have all the historical messages that you exchange with your partners, right? And the external applications. So you can just reuse them.
Mhm. Okay.
And
Mhm.
maybe
Yes.
because what is actually important, right, is that we should come back to this very basic concept, that we can, store the historical messages, and we can repeat them, because this actually gives us lots of possibilities, as I mentioned. And sometimes I have to admit that sometimes um, the ideas that we received from our customers, right, are the ideas that we would never come up to, right? Because once they get the concept that, okay, APIs are basically used very I would say in every business process, right? And now it's up to them how they will use it, right? Whether they will validate the whole API in the middleware platform, in the SAP system, or whether they would just repeat it, right? So the point that I want to make is that we can use the APIs even for, um, such edge cases that we wouldn't think about, like the production simulation, right? So of course, when you are implementing new platform, you also want to make sure that that the performance wise everything is working, right? So this actually was one of the ideas. So at one of the customer at the master data team, we actually did some API testing where we validated, how the SAP PO worked, how the messages were posted. But then once we actually shown the idea, very smart people from the customer came to us and asked us, hey guys, if you can take the production messages, right, can you simulate them in the QA system? Because for the specific number of interfaces, we would like to make sure that we can just handle the load, and that we have all the, background job, all the processes that are that are dependent on those APIs that are working, right? So guess me how much time it took us to set set it up for, like, let's say 10 interfaces. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have no idea.
So I would say that if you would like to repeat something like that for, UI or the end-to-end testing, you would have to spend like weeks, if not months. Yeah. And Costa from our team, he did it within one working day. And because again, we can take what is available in the historical messages, right, in the production systems, and thanks to the fact that we can just repeat exactly the same message, right, we can just do it almost in the real time if you would like to do this.
Is the access to all of this data somehow also different between the SAP API and the standard API testing solutions? Access by everyone to the test data that you've gathered? Is it something like important for enterprise customers, or is it?
Yeah, yeah, yes, for sure. Yeah. So of course, you have to make sure that when you collect the data from the production, right, only the relevant people will have access to it with the authorizations that you already have within your system, right? So it should actually follow your enterprise policies, right? And what is even more important, in my opinion, is the fact that all those test cases should be stored in the, let's say, secure place, right? So ideally, if you are the customer, you would like to control fully those test cases. So in my opinion, this should be something that is also stored in the customer environment, right?
Let's try to have a look at some of the questions we have. The first question is from Ramesh. So when do you recommend doing the API testing? And I think we also have a similar question also from Sabri. So how do we start with with API testing in SAP? So maybe we'll try to answer this in two ways. One way, there's a book on the SAP Press Store, which is called SAP API Testing Strategy and Execution. And within this book, some of the authors from INT4 and also from a customer company, they try to answer some of the basic questions related to SAP API testing, meaning, first and foremost, why should you be doing SAP API testing? So, the topic that we're trying to discuss today, but also what is SAP API testing? Also, when should we be doing that? Who should be doing that? And how should we start doing this? So maybe I would point you to this SAP Press book first. Then we also have an open SAP two open SAP trainings from INT4 where we discuss SAP API testing and also service virtualization topics. So these are the two sources where you can just go directly and you can learn at least from the high level perspective how to do those things. I don't know, Matti, if you have any comments on that also. Any other comments?
I would say that you should you should know, right, what actually you want to do. So for the technical team that is responsible for the SAP PO, that would be a different stage, and for the S4HANA implementation project, that could be also a different stage. Yeah, but I think that in this book that you mentioned, this is all well described.
Yes. So it's also Ramesh. It's also, we should not be thinking that the API testing, that the SAP API testing will be done by a single person or by a single team, right? There will be different teams involved at different stages. There might be developers involved at some very early stage. Then there are the functional consultants, which are involved on a slightly later stage, which is usually the string integration testing, so SIT testing. And then we have the UAT testing, right, where we can also start by doing SAP API testing before we go into the user stories. Then there's also regression testing phase, right, which which we have to fit into all of those phases. So it's a very good question, but there are many different times when you would be doing the SAP API testing, but it also depends on which activity are you performing. So which is the team you're working for. I like this quote, also this maybe remark from Amit. SAP APIs, this is the quiet kid in the class, right? We only the customers only notice them where something starts acting up, meaning something goes wrong. And I think it's very the point we're trying to make here, and I think Alina made a very good question. How to make sure that the SAP integration is visible across the company. So how to make everyone aware that SAP integration is responsible for the selling processes, for shipping processes, for buying processes, and no one else is doing that in another way, right? You do not sell, buy, and ship through a user interface. You do it through APIs, right? Especially in the all of the companies who are working with the extended supply chain. So I guess, Amit, what you're trying to say is we should not have it like this, I hope. But yeah, currently, very often this is the case. It's very difficult for us to show the innovation, that the innovation is actually blocked just because you're not doing SAP API testing. So how can you connect more systems? How can you go into the composable ERP space where you're not doing any kind of SAP API testing? Right? It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, right?
You touched the composable ERP, right? But now we have also this tendency of going into the cloud, yeah. So in the cloud, all the you are not controlling even all the releases that are happening within the cloud, right? From your providers, and that's actually the reason why you should start thinking very quickly on the SAP API testing, just to make sure that after the release in the test system, right, you just validated those APIs, ensuring that it will not affect any business issues when the release will be added in the production. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mati, and thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about the subject, there are at least two ways to learn more. The first one is this book, Testing SAP APIs. This is an SAP Press book. It's called Testing SAP API Strategy and Execution. So it's an excellent next step if you want to dive a little bit deeper into this topic. And the second one, you can either follow me and also Mateusz on and INT4 on LinkedIn to just stay in touch, and hopefully we'll be publishing a lot more episodes of the show, navigating SAP API testing, and we're hoping that you will join the other shows too. So thank you so much for today, and yeah, I hope we will be able to see you on the next show. Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys. See you.